Councillors, officers and members of the public, welcome to the 2nd of August 2023 Ordinary Meeting of Council. I'll now open the meeting with the first item on this evening's agenda, which is the reading of the prayer. Almighty God be with us as we work for the people of the Shire of Mirrabul. Grant us wisdom that we may care for the Shire as true stewards of your creation. May we be aware of the great responsibilities placed upon us. Help us to be just in all our dealings, and may our work prosper for the good of all. Amen. I'll now read the acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. Councillors, in accordance with Mirrabul Shire Council's governance rules, the Council will be recording and live streaming this meeting. The Mirrabul News and Star Weekly have also been granted permission to record this meeting. Councillors, I can confirm that all councillors are in attendance this evening, except for Councillor Tatchell, who's put in an apology for this meeting. Item number 6, we have the minutes from the 5th of July 2023 Ordinary Meeting of Council to be confirmed. Do I have a councillor to move that the minutes be confirmed? Can move Councillor Berry. Second to Councillor Minari. Is there any dissent? All in favour? I declare the motion carried. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare for tonight's meeting? No? Item number 8 is public question time. Councillors, we have received 4 questions from the members of the public to consider at this evening's meeting. The first question is from Calvin Granger and Dean Helson from Council Watch, and the question and response will be read by Caroline Busson. Caroline.
Thank you. So the question: can Council please advise the dollar amount of cost shifting from state government they estimate they incurred in 2022-23 financial year? The response: the issue of cost shifting in local government has long been a great concern for the sector. Cost shifting occurs when higher levels of government transfer financial responsibilities to local councils without providing adequate funding to cover those expenses. When costs are shifted without corresponding funding, it puts an undue burden on local councils, and ultimately it is a cost borne by ratepayers. Council doesn't keep a running tally of cost shifting impacts, as it would be an extremely onerous process, so we're unable to answer the question as presented. However, we welcome efforts from individuals and community groups highlighting the impacts of cost shifting on local communities and ratepayers when it occurs.
Thank you, Caroline. The second question is from Mr. John Kowalski, and the question and response will be read by Phil Jeffrey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The question is, can Council please update me on its latest exact start and completion dates for construction of the Ballan Library and Community Hub? And the response is, the current program for the Ballan Library project has Council inviting tenders for construction in September, October 2023 at this stage. Given we are only at pre-tender phase, an exact commencement date cannot be provided, as it depends on many factors, including the success of the procurement process, Council awarding a construction contract and agreed construction program with the preferred builder. However, subject to all these processes going to plan, construction is likely to commence in early 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. The third question is also from Mr. John Kowalski, and the question and response will again be read by Mr. Phil Jeffrey.
Yes, the question is, does Council plan to remove the nature strip parking bays in Simpson Street, Ballan, immediately on each side of the pedestrian refuge crossing point to Mill Park? And the response is, Council is currently reviewing the indented parking either side of the pedestrian refuge in Simpson Street and will provide a written response to Mr. Kowalski's recent correspondence in the coming week.
Thank you. The fourth question is from Ms. Lisa Keynes, and the question and response will be read by Phil Jeffrey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The question is, why isn't the Council investing more in Blackwood and surrounding areas, opposed to a reduction due to budget constraints? They have great potential for tourism and improving the visitor experience. With some investments in infrastructure, the Council could achieve quick wins and potentially replicate this success in other small towns. And the response is there are two items on tonight's agenda that relate to this question. The first item is the Township Improvement Plan for Blackwood. Assuming that is supported, officers will be looking to implement the priority actions this financial year following some further engagement with the community. There is $240,000 allocated in the budget to undertake this work on the ground. The second item relates to the Economic Development Visitor Economy Strategy that identifies the important role that small towns play in supporting a strong visitor economy and identifies the creation of small town placemaking activation plans. On adoption, officers will implement an action plan to commence the development of these plans, which will include Blackwood.
Thank you, Mr Jeffrey. Item number 9 is petitions. As there are no petitions for this meeting, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Item number 10 is presentations and deputations. Again, as there are no presentations or deputations, we'll move to the next agenda item. Item 11 is the Chief Executive Officer reports, and item 11.1 is the appointment of the Committee of Management under S14 of the Crown Land Act, Darley Park Recreation Reserve. Councillors, we have a recommendation in the papers before you regarding this report. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Moved, Councillor Edwards.
I have a question.
Yes.
I want to get a second first.
No, please.
My question is, this has been there since 1985. Why wasn't it picked up earlier?
Mr CEO.
I'll have to take it on notice to why it wasn't picked up earlier.
So my understanding, Councillor Sullivan, is it was because they want to enter into a lease, not the existing user agreements, and so therefore it hadn't been an issue, but because they want to potentially issue into a lease, it doesn't enable it.
Sorry, I think I understand that. My question was, why wasn't this picked up earlier? I understand the rationale as to where we're at this point in time, but why wasn't it picked up earlier? That's all. Because there must have been leases previously.
No, there wasn't. That was the question I asked, and that's what I'm suggesting. It's only because they're now looking at leases that this became an issue.
And then it raises another question. Are there any other reserves within the municipality where this similar might exist that we should be exploring?
Mr CEO.
Through the Chair, Councillor Edwards is correct. It was a seasonal user agreement previously. Regarding the leases and licences, we are aware of Racecourse Reserve that we were walking through, but that would be the exception, and the rest of them would be on seasonal user agreements.
So we have the notice of motion moved by Councillor Edwards. Any councillor seconded? Councillor Dudzik. Any dissent? All in favour?
Hang on.
Sorry. Okay, so Councillor Edwards, as you move the motion, do you wish to speak on the motion?
Yeah, certainly. So from my perspective, and I did ask very similar questions to Councillor Sullivan at the briefing. So from my perspective, what this does allow, it allows us to enter into a lease arrangements by doing this in the future, which is the model that we've been looking at for this reserve moving forward. As to whether it affects other reserves, that's probably irrelevant tonight. It's about the Darley Park Reserve in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Tom, microphone.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Mr Mayor, I'm not against the intent of this, but my concern is that at the moment the status of this land is reserved Crown land in favour of Moorabool Shire, which is a successor-in-law to the former Bacchus Marsh Shire. So hence that's the status it is. Once it is revoked, then it becomes Crown land and potentially subject to native title. My concern is that we could find ourselves in a bind because of that. And it just concerns me that we don't want to find ourselves as we make a move for a particular issue now, only to find ourselves and make a rod for our own back further down the track. That's my reservation. And I think at one of the previous briefings I did ask, if I may, with your indulgence, there was a suggestion, the time would be this going one way or the time the other, but we never received that advice. So I don't recall seeing what the time differences were between going down the path of getting the Governor and Council or the surrendering. And I haven't seen that.
Mr CEO.
Through the chair, I do apologise. That was part of a briefing that was given as such. The difference in time was this would allow a faster turnaround of in the region of 5 to 6 months because of the process involved. I'm not too sure if Silas wants to give any more details as to why that is, but when we did the briefing, that bit was explained in detail.
So through the chair, it basically takes some time to go through because we've got to go through consultation and things like that. It's basically going through the governor or the minister is exactly the same amount of time, so we can go both ways.
Thank you, Celeste. Councillor Sullivan, does that satisfy the question?
I understand there seems to be some expediency because of trying to get the licensing and lease agreements. But I think longer term, we could find ourselves in greater strife because I understand, I went to something on Friday, which has nothing to do with council, but I was there. And in fact, there is the movement for treaty in Victoria is getting significantly advanced, which means that the Indigenous people will take more control over land and water. And if this reverts to Crown land, then in fact, I'm not saying anything will happen, but there is the possibility because at the moment it has a status, and revert to Crown land it has no status. So I think that's what my concern.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Dudzik, you seconded the motion. Did you wish to speak on the motion?
A licence is the preferred arrangement for all parties, and this is the process that council officers have advised we need to go through, and I trust their advice.
Thank you. Councillors, does any other councillors want to speak on the motion? Councillor Edwards, as you move the motion, did you want to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. No, I just had a question. Do we need the licence or lease to go through before the clubs take occupancy?
Lee, would you take that question?
Through the chair, all user groups on the site have a user agreement in place at the moment, and so that will stay in place until such time as the lease or licence is executed through the process. So they're able to access the facility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, I'd invite you as the mover of the motion to close the debate.
Yeah, certainly, Mr Mayor. Thank you. So what we have here is a move towards what we already have in place for many other reserves across the Shire. The fact is that whilst we have a vested interest, which is a legal attestation, I assume, the reality is that we aren't able to actually enter into a lease or anything without going through the minister or their office. So I think what this will do is actually, once we've given management rights, like we do with Bacchus Marsh Racecourse Reserve and like we do with many other reserves across the Shire, it will help expedite the process for council moving forward. So therefore, I'd recommend we follow officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillors, you have the recommendation moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Dudzik. We've had a debate. Council will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare the motion carried. Yes. Councillor Sullivan has called for a division, so all those in favour? Yep. Councillor Berry, Councillor Dudzik, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Ward. Against? Councillor Minari and Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Councillors, item number 11.2 is the draft CCTV policy. There's no registered speakers for the item, so councillors, again, you have a recommendation in the papers before you regarding the report.
So moved.
Motion has been moved by Councillor Dudzik. Seconded? Seconded, Councillor Berry. Yes, Councillor Sullivan has a question. Tom?
Oh, sorry, thank you. I keep forgetting. I understand this is to go out for a 4-week community consultation. I sort of direct you to page 5 or under section 5.5.4 where it talks about access to usage footage. The one under 5.5.4, and this will come out in the wash, it says law enforcement agency will be granted access. Now, I would have thought it may be, not will be, because will implies you have to. So I'm just I know this is a draft document, it may be the case, but I just question why we're saying will, because in the paragraphs above, anyone who makes application has to get permission for the CEO to release that. But to say will, and I just, maybe it's been pedantic, but I think we just need to be careful about that. That's all.
Take that on notice. Celeste, would you like to, it's a governance matter?
Say through the chair, yeah, we're happy to take that on notice within the draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. So we have a motion, it's been moved and seconded. Councillors, any dissent? All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Councillors, item number 12 is the community strengthening reports. Item number 12.1, the first report is the final economic development and visitor economy strategies. Again, councillors, you have a recommendation of the papers before you regarding this report. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation?
I'll move with the question.
Yes.
I'll move with the question, Mr Mayor.
Yep. Councillor Sullivan, please ask your question.
My question is, there's a lot of information there, and are we going to get some implementation documents will sit under it? Because it's like looking for a gold, trying to find the gems in there, because you've got to wade through a lot of paper. I think the problem is when you pay consultants by the word, that's what you get. But I think are we going to have something that's precise, concise, and people can say, yep, that's what we need to do, rather than wade through this? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Lee, would you like to take that question?
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Through the chair, yes, there will be. What will occur is the document will be likely broken into the themes. So if there's a particular theme that a party is interested in, they can go straight to that information.
Thank you, Lee. So the motion's been moved by Councillor Sullivan. Have someone seconded? Councillor Minari. Councillors, any dissent? Councillor Edwards. Okay. Councillor Sullivan, as the mover of the motion, I would invite you to speak on the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It is an omnibus motion, I must say. There's a lot of material in there, so I'm not quite sure which particular point my learned colleague is disagreeing with.
Economic development strategy.
Okay, well, I guess the thing is these were ones that have been through a considerable amount of consultation, and I would take on board the concern of the council if that one were to be, if you wanted to have it stood aside, I'd be more than happy to do that for the moment. But as I said, these are works that have been ongoing for some time, and I think that's how they've come to council, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Edwards, you're opposing the motion. Would you like to speak to the matter?
Yeah, certainly, Mr Mayor. So look, it is, my concern does sit with the economic development strategy. There's a lot of and what some of our outcomes is that we're going to ensure that we continue economic development through the continuing that growth. So it seems to be counterintuitive. We're saying well, we're not keeping up with growth, but that's how we're going to continue economic development. Also, there's some concerns in there for me around, it's looking at growing building, for example. So it's talking about supporting affordable housing, which has caused a lot of concerns in our community in recent time, particularly with some of the proposed developments that we've seen just off Lord Street and also in just off Clifton Drive as well. So some of those so-called affordable housing. We also talk about increasing in one of our KPIs being increasing in investment inquiries. What I would like to see is us being a bit more proactive and actually relying on data that says we actually have increased investment rather than just inquiries, because things like that, what I don't see in the economic development report, and I think I've been consistent with this message, is I don't see some of those bigger targets. So what I'd like to see us do is, rather than target just our small existing businesses and trying to grow more small existing businesses with the growth, I'd like to see us target some big capture. We also talk about attracting skilled workforce. I think we actually have a very skilled workforce within Moorabool. Unfortunately, they have to travel outside of our shire to get work. What I'd like to do is actually reverse that and attract the big businesses that we could utilise our skilled workforce so that they're not travelling. It's been the peri-urban problem for the last 20 years is we continually send all our workforce outside of our shire to work. So I'd like to see us try and target, in particular, big businesses Now, that may come through planning scheme amendments or doing land strategies that may identify key parcels of land in places like Balan, Bacchus Marsh, wherever it be, very similar to what we did with the agribusiness. Unfortunately, we can't always be aware of lizards in different bits and pieces, but I would like to see us attract those big employers. And I don't see in the moment anything within our strategy that directly targets those as key successes. So that's my concerns with that part of it. And if I will foreshadow that we could accept the other two as a motion if councillors so did support my logic here.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Minari, you were the seconder of the motion. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Obviously, Councillor Edwards has given us a lot of food for thought, and thank you for expressing that. And I know, you know, in past weeks you also have added other things. Obviously, these two documents are a massive amount of work, and they hold that bowl of work for, you know, many years, and I think we have, you know, we need to make sure it's correct. So I do feel that if, you know, I do agree with Councillor Edwards in saying that there are some really main key aspects that maybe we still need to look at. So I'm really sort of on the fence here, and maybe a little bit more robust discussion in terms of those topics maybe where we have to sit and where we have to go. So interested to hear if anyone else has any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minari. Would any other councillors care to speak to the motion, or do they have any questions? Councillor Berry.
I don't have a question. I do believe that we did discuss some larger businesses that had been investigated through council, and I'm erring on what David is just reiterating over that. I think to encourage some larger businesses into the area would assist in economic growth.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No? Okay, councillors, we have a notice of motion or recommendation in your documents that has been moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Minari. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, all in favour? Yep. All those in favour? Against? Against? Okay, the motion has been lost. Councillor Edwards, you foreshadowed an alternate motion.
So the alternate motion will be the council adopts the Visitor Economy Strategy 2023 to 2027.
Can I have someone second the alternate motion? Councillor Berry. Anyone against the alternate motion? No. All those in favour?
It's not a question.
Sorry, Tom. Councillor Sullivan has a question.
Probably a question to Councillor Edwards. With the economic strategy, what do you propose to do with that to sort of give direction? That's all.
Yeah. So normal process, I'm assuming, and I'll look to the CEO for advice here, would be that they will revisit some of those things and bring it back to council as part of the council plan.
Exactly. That's.
Yeah.
Okay, so councillors, just so absolute clarity, where the alternate motion will be that council adopts the Visitor Economy Strategy 2023 to 2027. That's the alternate motion. Did you correct, Councillor Edwards?
Correct. So moved, Mr.
Yep,
Mayor.
so moved. All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Okay, councillors, we'll move to item 13, Customer Care and Advocacy Reports. Item 13.1, the first report is the Work Cover Premium 2023 to 2024. Councillors, you have a recommendation in the papers before you regarding this. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll move with a question to the CEO. I'm just curious as to why did the government provide any justification of such huge increases to work cover?
Through the chair, bar what was in the media around the work cover premiums going up around the state and the deficiencies and the deficits that exist in the programme, there was no reason. It's not related to our risk profile, is what I can say. It's just an overall increase that's happening across the state.
An increased tax, maybe. Thank you, Mr. C.
Motion's been moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Dudzik. Any dissent? All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Item 14 is Community Assets and Infrastructure Reports. Item 14.1, the first report is a response to petition, extend garbage and recycling services into the Bland Meredith Road. Councillors, you have a recommendation in the papers?
Mr Mayor, I would move the recommendation with a point 3 that the petitioners be advised of Council's decision in writing.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. So Councillor Sullivan has moved the motion with an additional point 3. Yep. Do I have someone second the motion? Councillor Minari. Any dissent? All those in favour of the motion as recommended with point 3? Thank you. Carried. Item 14.2, the first report is the Township Improvement Plan for Blackwood. No registered speakers. Councillors, you have a recommendation of the papers before you. Do I have Councillor move that? Councillor Minari?
Can I move it with a question?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to ask officers, we had quite a robust discussion in regards to this, and it was great to have lots of community consultation. There was, in that in the works, lots of, I worked with lots of residents in the community in regards to some things, and the Progress Committee also let the officers know about the outdated signage in Blackwood in terms of all different things like Airbnb, like B&Bs that haven't been there for years, updates to road signages and things like that. I just wanted to ask whether, and to make sure, whether that has been implemented into this process with the Township Improvement Plan of Blackwood.
Thank you, Councillor Minari. Mr Jeffrey?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can confirm we do have that signage audit that group undertook, and the plan would be to sweep through and update all that signage as part of the implementation of this project.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
So the motion's been, the recommendation has been moved by Councillor Minari. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any dissent? All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Item 14.3 is the draft Bacchus Marsh Avenue of Honour Management Strategy and Preservation Plan. Councillors, again, you have a recommendation in the papers. Do I have a councillor to move that? Councillor Dudzik. Second? Councillor Edwards? Any question, Councillor Sullivan?
What will be the consultation period? It's not noted here.
Mr Jeffrey?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we're proposing a 4-week consultation period.
Councillors, any dissent? All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Councillors, item 15, we'll move to other reports listed in the agenda, of which there are none. Item 16, we'll now move to notices of motions, of which there are none. Item 17 is notices of rescission and of gain, of which there are none. Item 18, councillors, you have a recommendation in the papers before you to receive the Mayor's report. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation? Councillor Berry. Second to Councillor Minari. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, you have the Mayor's report and that has been accepted. Thank you very much. Councillors, we're going to whip around the room now and do the councillors' reports. Starting with Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was indisposed at the last meeting, so I have some carryover matters, I hope with your indulgence. One was sort of quite distressing in the sense that the Dunstown School has closed after a very long period, which sort of indicates the restrictions that the catchments have made on our small towns up there. This is prima facie a case where a community hasn't got the ability to grow and expand, and this is a result of it. And it's just disappointing, and I think something we need to be aware of, and hence I suppose that's why Council was very proactive trying to promote sewerage in Bungaree and Wallace for that very reason, because of the limited ability for growth in those towns because of residing in a water catchment. So I just want to make that point. The other matter I wish to report to Council is that this is the timber industry road evaluation study. It was posed to us sometime, why is Moorabool Shire in timber towns? Because we don't have any native timber harvesting in our shire. Although I do note we do have softwood plantations which exist in the western half of our municipality. This document is one that the government uses for funding for roads that are impacted by timber industry. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are harvested in your locality, but they're passing through. So this is the one for 23 to 27. Now, because of the good work done by our officers, Sands Road in Moorabool Shire is scheduled for reconstruction for an amount of $1.744 million. Now, that's a good outcome, and I think our investment in timber towns is being quite handsomely rewarded. So I just want to make sure that council is aware that and the government does use that as a funding mechanism for those things. So, and that 1.74 million is monies that we don't have to find. So I think that's important. So it's a good outcome all round. So thank you for that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Very good points. Councillor Minari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this month, I attended the Rural Council's Victoria Forum in Echuca with Mr. Mayor and Councillor Berry. Obviously, when we got there, we were very quickly reminded about Campaspe Shire's challenges last year with the floods and how that continues to affect their shire, and it was really interesting to hear from their council. It was, and I felt very similar ways when we had the storm 2 years ago. So it was really interesting how they dealt with those challenges and are continuing to work with their community. We also obviously had the forum, and the key topic was doing things differently, and we looked at things like cost of living and all sorts of different things that came out of that forum, and I always take out of those days meeting other councillors, understanding other shires and the challenges that they face, and also the things that they're doing really, really well. For example, Beaufort, just up near Ballarat, was really exciting to see what they've done there in terms of growth and subdivision. That word sometimes has a negative connotation to it, but in this sense for Beaufort, it really grew the town and it was a real positive. We also, some of us met with Senator Jane Hume a couple of weeks ago here in Balan, and organised by Councillor Tatchell, so we thank him for that. And of course she was here to talk about cost of living pressures in Moorabool. And I suppose that sort of popped into my head, Councillor Edwards, in regards to the economic development. And, we talked a lot about roads and education and tourism, and also the phone connectivity in Moorabool, which is quite ridiculous. So we had lots of robust discussion in that meeting. And yeah, a few other things, but that was all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minari. Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 6th of July, I attended the opening of the netball court upgrade project in Bungaree. I don't know how they play on those courts in the winter, because it was absolutely freezing on the opening day. On Thursday the 13th, I attended the Rural Council Victoria pre-forum tour of the 2022 floods, along with Mr. Mayor and Ms. Deputy Mayor. The flood event by the Campaspe Shire, and yes, Councillor Minari, it was just devastating to see it in real life. The news at the time told the story that we saw on television, but until you see and witness the destruction and devastating these floods, how devastating these floods were, and even whilst we were there, the river was actually rising, so residents were becoming a bit angst. And we actually asked the question, can this rise to the depth that it did during the floods? And they said, no, you needed that amount of floods, but you could understand the angst in the residents around, because their actual main street was a river. So there's 3 rivers that come in there, and yeah, very devastating. But I won't say great to be there and see it, but it was very interesting. And the evening meal and the guest speaker who talked on biodiversity was very interesting. So all these things that are coming, he was head of, I think it was Victoria, correct me if I was wrong, but I asked the question, do you think we have regulations well for food and all sorts of seeds and things that come into our country? And so we've got in place what we can have in place, but you can see the devastation he talked about, that, you know, if seeds and other plant life come into our country that shouldn't be. Then on Friday, for the Rural Council's Victoria Forum, whole day agenda was an excellent day, and Councillor Minari has touched on some of those subjects. I also took away a lot from the presentation on rebalancing the nation by the Regional Australia Institute, and she spoke on it specific to Victoria today and what it will be, the targets will be in 2032, which is a very interesting presentation. And on Sunday the 16th of August, I attended the Grow West 20th Anniversary Community Planting Day at Balan Wastewater Treatment Plant, where 5,000 trees were planted on that day by residents and community groups. Well done to all, and a beautiful part of our shire, which is not noticeable when you go along the back road to Bacchus Marsh, the Balan back road. Once we got into the property and over that area, it's just a beautiful part of our shire, and couldn't believe that they planted those 5,000 trees in the one day. Lucky for them, it was a very nice day. On the Monday the 17th of July, myself, Councillor Tatchell, Councillor Ward and Councillor Murray met with Senator Jane Hume at the Balan Chambers to discuss cost of living issues in our shire. We hope that Senator Hume's voice is heard and real action is taken. When you have price rises in the cost of essential goods such as housing, utilities, petrol and particularly groceries, where many more locals are needing to depend on Soul Food, and I'll just give you an example of what the Soul Food place through the neighbourhood place in Bacchus Marsh is currently doing at the moment. 6,000 meals in 2022. Only 4 years ago they were doing 2,000 meals per year, and they're expecting that figure to rise for the 2023 year. So that's the Soul Food place giving out meals to people in our community who can't afford just the simple groceries. So I don't know. I hope that, Senator Hume, she did ask me a second time for the figures, so hopefully something can happen in the future for these people. On the 18th of July, Tuesday, with Councillor Dudzik and Councillor Minari, we thank the staff for our tour of the Avenue of Honour in Bacchus Marsh. I think we all learnt lots about the trees, and can't believe they have gables going across from branches to, if they happen to want to drop a limb and those elm trees drop onto the Avenue of Honour, it's good to know that we are protected in that area. It was a very, very good tour. Learnt lots, and I think we've got some great staff in that area. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Dudzik.
I attended on the 18th of July with Councillor Minari and Berry the tour of the Avenue of Honour, and yes, it was a fabulous tour, and our staff are looking after the Avenue of Honour very well. It's amazing to see how much effort has been put into looking after the Avenue of Honour over many years, and the planning going forward on how they're going to continue to look after it. On the 18th of July, I also attended the first meeting of the Public Art Advisory Committee. It was a fabulous new committee, fantastic committee members involved, and it's very exciting. They've actually got plans already of projects that they're going to be involved in new public art that's going to be delivered around the 1,000 steps. So it's very exciting that they're actually going to achieve something, and I look forward to seeing what they produce with Councillor Minari. On the 20th of July, I attended the funeral of Hilmar Cumberlow, or Irish, who is the past president of the Bacchus Marsh RSL. And he was also Vice President of the Bacchus Marsh Great War Centenary Committee. And he was a Vietnam veteran who lived within our shire. And Irish will be sadly missed by many.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, just one item of special note, Mr Mayor, and that's last Tuesday I attended the Bacchus Marsh Blacksmiths and Forge Cottage. And there's some concerns raised there because we've got some issues with it at the moment, in that the bricks are crumbling and there's some white ant damage, which has been funded, I believe, to be works carried out, but it's currently awaiting Vic Road study, I believe, and they're really concerned that if we don't action this sooner and we wait for the Vic Road study of the roundabout, that it may be beyond repair. So they're just hoping that someone could be in contact with them in relation to that. That's all from me, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillors, thank you each for your reports. Can I have a notice of motion to move to accept the councillor reports? Move Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Berry. All in favour? Councillors, been carried. Thank you. Item number 20 is urgent business. Councillors, I've been notified of 2 items of urgent business, both from Councillor Edwards. Before we move on to those, I'll just whip around the room and see if there's any further items. Councillor Sullivan? Sorry, urgent business?
Urgent business. No, I don't even want to do that. I've got some questions.
Yeah, we'll take the councillor. We'll take the questions first.
Okay. I'll get away with it. Just a couple of questions in reference to my colleague Councillor Dudzik on the public art thing, where they're keen to do stuff. Is it a reference group or a proactive group? I'm just a bit curious where they sit it. Is it something that we refer to them for comment, or do they take the lead? And I'm just curious as to what this may look like going forward. So that's my first question.
Lee?
Through the chair, it's an advisory committee.
Advisory.
That's correct.
So, yeah, more of a reference, resource, very good. My second question is, I have 3, so I've got my indulgence. I've been driving around, and I don't know whether the council have noticed, you see these little flags with little red flags in our main streets, obviously to denote where trees may be planted. I think that's what they may be. Some of them are under power lines, so I don't know whether they're going to be midget trees or we're going to have an issue going forward, so perhaps it's someone might have a look at that, that's all. I can name 2 towns I've seen them and they're under power lines, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, that's not a good idea, so...
Mr Jeffrey?
So, through you, Mr Mayor, yeah, when they do select a species, they do make sure the power lines are considered, so they won't be tall trees that go under the power lines.
Okay, thank you. My third and final question, Mr Mayor, is given the recent announcement that there's going to be a ban on gas on new developments going forward, how does that now sit within planning permits and what have you? So where's it all going to land? This is on new stuff. When there'll be developments in transition. So how does council deal with that, or is that decision hasn't been made how it's going to be treated?
Mr Bazood now.
Mr Mayor, the standard process would be for us to gain more information from government, to be able to have a fully informed set of information, and from there to see what would the implications and impacts be for existing and future developments, and then based on that, most likely a briefing to council if there's any significant implications.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Minari, any items of urgent business or any questions?
No urgent business, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
No urgent business, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Dudzik.
No urgent business, thank you.
Councillor Edwards, thank you for notifying us of your 2 items of urgent business. Would you like to speak to why you are requesting the first item be admitted into urgent business?
The first item, Mr Mayor, is the proposal that council endorses putting forward projects in round 4 of the local roads and community infrastructure program. It does need council endorsement. They are projects that you'll see there broadly across the shire and come from our capital program. So that's the first one that I'm seeking to have put forward. And the second one is to do with council investigating the merits of a pedestrian crossing or pedestrian safety measures in O'Leary's Way, Mattingly. As we know, that's probably one of our fastest growing areas. Hallis Way is notorious as it's been a pretty quick road, but now that all those houses are up, including shops, and across the road you've got a chemist, there's a lot of people that are concerned for their safety, so it's just for an investigation. So those are the two pieces I'd like to have.
Thank you.
Included, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, do you have any questions regarding these items of urgent business of Councillor Edwards? No? Do I have someone to move the two items of urgent business? Councillor Dudzik and seconded Councillor Berry. All in favour? Thank you. Councillor Edwards, we'll now put, you have the floor to discuss the first item.
Yeah, so certainly, Mr Mayor. Councillors have had a chance to read this, I hope. So basically the federal government is providing funding opportunities through round 4 of the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Fund grants program to continue the time of delivery of critical infrastructure for communities. The allocation of this funding allows council to bring forward a range of projects identified in the long-term capital improvement program that would have otherwise been funded in later years. The motion is for council to endorse those as per the motion I've in front.
Thank you. And just noting that item 2B there is missing the dollar sign. It is $561,018.
Correct, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. So that's been moved by Councillor Edwards. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Sullivan. Any dissent? All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Councillor Edwards, your second item.
Second motion is that council investigates the merits of a pedestrian crossing or pedestrian safety measures in O'Leary's Way, Mattingly, adjacent to the shopping centre precinct. Requests a report regarding the investigation, including options to improve pedestrian safety at this location.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Edwards. Seconded. Councillor Berry. Any dissent? All in favour? Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, that concludes urgent business. Item 21, closed meeting of the public. We have no closed session of the meeting to the public this evening, councillors. So item 22 is the meeting closure. Thank you, councillors, officers and members of the public for attending this evening's meeting. I now declare the meeting closed at 6:47.